The draft is more important than ever for the Orlando Magic. So instead of looking forward to this year's draft on our Draft Friday, we're going to look back at what the Magic needed to get from their last two drafts today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is a very late May 23rd, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2011 or 2012 season, somewhere in there. It's been a while. I've been around the Magic for a long time. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, instead of looking ahead to next year's draft, because we still got 5 weeks to do that, 4 weeks now almost. Oh boy, it's going to come quick. We'll do more draft stuff next week. On this Draft Friday, we're going to look back at the Magic's last two drafts, what the Magic were looking for, how that's changed, and where the Magic have fallen short. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we premiere at noon on Friday, or any other time, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We especially appreciate you if you make us your first listen of the day. We especially appreciate you if you are one of our everyday listeners. We just passed 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. I see the numbers. We're doing really, really well here in the offseason. I truly appreciate that. I appreciate y'all letting me record in the morning instead of late at night anymore. Maybe have more noon episodes here during the offseason, so I appreciate that as well. We're all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. The theme of this offseason so far, the theme that we've hit on, the theme that has kind of animated all the discussions has been the new phase. When Jeff Weltman said it during exit interviews that we are now looking at moves in a win now lens. It was an oddly, and especially for him, an oddly open statement of intent from this Magic team. An oddly just clear-cut, clear-throated statement that, things are different now. That we've entered this new phase of the rebuild. Magic have been to the playoffs 2 straight times. It's not as much about, we got this long-term future. We've got all this development to do. It's the time to win is now. And I hope throughout the course of this week, through our conversation with Kahil, through the conversation I had yesterday, naming Paolo and Franz our MVPs of the season, I hope you understand and see that, yes, the time is getting to be now. The championship window may not be open, but the championship screen door, you got to swing that thing open a little bit to get to the door. That was a very labored analogy. But you get the point. We're expecting the Magic to do something different this year. And maybe it's late. Honestly, it probably is late. Because we're looking at a draft for the Magic of 2 draft picks. And the Magic have a draft pick next year as well. Have a draft with conditions next year as well. We're looking at a Magic team with 2 draft picks that is trying to get out of the draft. Again, I really like this draft. We are currently doing the Locked On mock draft right now. I am currently negotiating trades with a whole bunch of teams. I still kind of want to keep one of my draft picks. I'm trying hard to keep one of my draft picks, and there are players that I really like in where the Magic are picking. But the Magic have a lot of questions about their young players. Not Paolo and Franz. Those guys are good and great. But we just saw Anthony Black, who's a great example of someone we've talked about a lot on this show. We just saw Anthony Black have a better sophomore season. By any measure, any measurement you want to make, Anthony Black was better this season. And was a huge, huge factor for this team. When he played well, the Magic won. It really was simple. After the All-Star break, he averaged 9.3 points per game. Didn't shoot particularly well. Averaged 9.3 points per game before the break, 28.2% from 3. After the break, 9.8 points per game, 38% from 3. In wins, he averaged 10.7 points per game and shot 40.8% from three and 47.8% from floor, compared to 8.1 points per game and 21.7% from three in losses. Naturally, Black struggled in the playoffs, 8.2 points per game and 15.4% from three. There's a lot to like about Anthony Black. I love AB. Cool dude, great guy to be around. You could see all the Magic players just oozing with his potential, telling him, hey, you've got to be aggressive. It was anytime we asked anybody about Anthony Black, it was, you've got to be aggressive. You've got to be aggressive. You can beat anybody off the dribble, get to the hole, have that confidence. And that's been the struggle, is getting him to play at that level consistently. If he were on, and I don't mean to pick on these teams, if he were on Brooklyn, if he were on Utah, if he were on New Orleans, if he were on a team, and maybe not New Orleans, if he were on Portland, if he were on a team, and again, that's not to single those teams out, they're on their own paths and doing their own things, but the kind of mistakes and development pressures they're willing to stomach are different than the Magic. The Magic can't stomach waiting on Anthony Black right now. The Magic can't say, or the Magic right now have to weigh how much they can stomach of Anthony Black's development. Do they think he's going to be what they need him to be? This year, he was that for a lot. He wasn't that for a lot. And obviously, with all the other role players struggling, with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope struggling, with how limited Gary Harris is, Anthony Black had a huge role, a huge role in this team. And a lot was riding on his shoulders. A lot was depending on him. And so Anthony Black is a talented player who needs time. The question is, how much time do the Magic have to give? How much time do the Magic have to give to a young player to develop someone they believe is talented? I mentioned this a few weeks ago. There is a threshold, and the Magic have to kind of set this line. What is the point where we are willing to trade Anthony Black? What kind of player would it take for them to move him? And there is that player exists. That player has to exist. Now, is it a star level player? Is it a starter level player? Is it Anthony Simons? Is that someone that Portland is interested in? Is it, whoever else it needs to be? That is a fair question to ask. What is that line? And what happens when the Magic cross that line? What happens when the Magic hit that line, reach it, and go to the next? As I said, Anthony Black is really talented. I really like him. I think there's a lot to be excited about with AB. But he may not be the right player for this team. And that's what I mean by a different kind of draft now. Even last year was a different kind of draft. And we're going to get to Tristan Da Silva here in a minute. When the Magic took Anthony Black 6th, and I see this comment all the time, the Magic need more from a 6th overall pick. Well, I don't know what a 6th overall pick is. Like, that's different for each draft. You enter the draft taking what the draft gives you. You decide, am I taking talent? Am I taking best fit? How do those things mash? How do those things mesh? But to all the arguments you say, the Magic wasted a pick, and we're going to get to Jett Howard too, wasted a pick on Anthony Black because they're not getting enough out of him. This is the fair criticism. That 6th pick represents the last lottery pick the Magic planned to have for a very long time. That was an opportunity. And Jeff Weltman at the time, coming off of the season this Magic had, where they were, 35 games, they were, whatever it was, 35 games. They were the last team eliminated from playoff contention. They were right there. Jeff Weltman did not treat that team like a winning team. I did in my mock draft. I treated them like a winning team. I went out and got some, I drafted I forget who I drafted that draft. Oh, I drafted Grady Dick that draft. Never yelled at me. And then I went out and got a veteran with my 2nd pick, but that's where the Magic are headed. The Magic got much better, much quicker than I think everybody anticipated. And they no longer had time to wait on a development project like Anthony Black. It would not shock me if part of this offseason is clearing out those development projects, maybe holding on to one. And maybe Jonathan Isaac counts as that one. Maybe Anthony Black counts as that one. But you don't have time to wait on players anymore. And whether the Magic need to wait on Anthony Black, whether Anthony Black is worth that wait, is one of the biggest decisions of this offseason. Because as we look to this draft, as we look to where the Magic go with the young prospects they want to bring in, they need players who are more ready-made to contribute immediately. And that leads us to another critical draft question. Where does Tristan Da Silva fit in on this future? We'll get to that. We'll get to him coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. They've actually over-rotated a little bit. They're coming in a little off plane. So that shot might be going way off to the right, but zaniness and having to rescue a drive, that's all part of the game. Every night is delivering highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments and how could tracking their trends help you build your next bet? Obviously, tonight is a big one in New York. Game 2 with wild statistics, wild scoring, wild finishes. You can be part of the excitement every day with a same game parlay or combining live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds. $200 in bonus bets adds the excitement if your first $5 bet hits. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're talking Magic drafts here. And look, I get into a lot of heated discussions about draft stuff. And I'm someone that downplays the draft. And look, I'm not saying it's not important. It's going to be even more important now that the Magic are entering apron territory, that the Magic are now a tax team, because draft picks are cost controlled. The rookie scale is a big deal. And you look at the teams that are in the playoffs right now, they do well in the draft. The Wolves drafted Anthony Edwards, number one. That's not so hard. The Thunder especially, like you look at the number of role players that they fed in with the draft, you sustain your ability to compete by drafting well. And I'm not going to lie, I don't think Jeff Weltman's been bad at drafting, but he has had some very big misses. And frankly, has had some misses in spots where he can't have misses. Now, look, it's sort of like the baseball theory right now where you're swinging for the fences or you strike out. Jeff Weltman has hit 2 home runs. Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner. And Paolo seems like the obvious choice now, but it was not. I still got my Post-it note somewhere here. I don't know where it went. My Post-it note disappeared. That people still razz me about. That was not an easy choice. Taking Franz Wagner at 9 or 8, wherever it was, not an easy choice. Jalen Suggs, a solid double. Maybe we're legging that out into a triple. We'll see. But the other picks, especially his second-round picks, which he's going to have to be much better at, and those are so valuable right now, it's been a lot of misses. And look, Mo Bamba didn't pan out, didn't make it to the end of his rookie contract. We're talking about Anthony Black as a potential trade candidate. We're going to talk about Jett Howard coming up here. This is an area where Jeff Weltman must improve as the Magic advance. So, what do we make then of Tristan Da Silva's season? What do we make of how Da Silva played and what he brought to the table, what he brought to the team? I think all of us were really excited about the prospect of Tristan Da Silva. No one was I don't think anyone was really hitting on that pick, saying it was a bad decision. It checked off a lot of boxes. He was a quality shooter in college. He was a veteran who everyone felt like could step right into the league and deliver consistency and constance for the Magic as a rookie. Look, the Magic had to throw this kid into the deep end. And I know he's not a kid. He's the same age as Paolo and Franz. They had to throw him into the deep end. With Paolo's injury, Tristan Da Silva stepped right into the starting lineup and really made things happen. Really did some impressive things. But in the end, he averaged 7.2 points per game, shot 33.5% from three, 3.2 attempts per game. In the end, he was largely out of the rotation by the end of the season. Instead of seemingly getting better and gaining more trust as Jamal Mosley tightened his rotation, Tristan Da Silva was the reliable guy you kept in your back pocket. Obviously, he'll get better. He's 23 years old. He's not anywhere near his peak. But you want to see rookies kind of find their way. And honestly, this is the part I keep getting hung up on. It didn't feel like the Magic were missing anything, keeping Da Silva on the bench late in the season. It didn't feel like the Magic lost much. It didn't feel like the Magic needed to play Da Silva. And that, to me, is the most concerning piece. Where Anthony Black was this super aggressive pick, this super high upside pick for a team that felt pretty close to winning. And look, Anthony Black's defense is amazing. I don't think I mentioned that in the first segment. Tristan Da Silva felt like the too conservative pick. The guy whose skills were so well defined and so limited feels too harsh, but I'll go with it, limited, that he was going to contribute in a specific way. And look, the Magic don't win a lot of games without Da Silva. I want to make that clear. He had the big shot, obviously, against Boston in December. He had some really nice games, had some games where he strung together a lot of threes, but then, like everyone else on the team, kind of turned back into a pumpkin and struggled to get his three-point shot going for much of the season. The Magic felt like the Magic got probably what they expected from Tristan Da Silva. And at the end of the day, this is a more veteran team now. There is less time for rookies, and you have to play your way into the game. You have to play your way onto the roster. So as we look ahead to this new reality, to the new version of the Magic that we're going to see this summer and into next season, where does Tristan Da Silva fit? Is he good enough to fill those backup power forward minutes that Jonathan Isaac filled? I don't think he is. I don't think he's impactful enough. I think that would be, as much as Da Silva might be a better offensive player, I think that would be a major downgrade. Obviously, Da Silva is not starting ahead of Paolo and Franz. So if he can't pressure for that role or pressure for Gary Harris's role, a role that I would expect the Magic to upgrade, and maybe Da Silva is a slight upgrade, but I'm kind of, that's one of the areas I'm actually looking to be more aggressive is to improve the bench. Where does Da Silva fit? Is he going to kind of fill the Caleb Houston role that he's just the spot starter? The guy that Jamal Mosley trusts to maintain his rotation? And look, that's valuable. Don't get me wrong. I think you need those players if you have players that can fill in on a moment's notice for a week when a guy goes down. As much as, and Paolo and Franz are Iron Men, so that's part of the issue too, is, the injuries they had this year are rare for their early careers. Da Silva's fit isn't clean anymore. It isn't so certain. And at the end of the day, you need guys who are going to impact in the playoffs. And for all the struggles the Magic had, Da Silva played only 2 games in the playoffs. He played about 5 total minutes. And while I don't think that should be the nail in the coffin or end his career or end giving him a chance, that still says a lot to me. That still tells me I don't trust this player against the best. And this is where Da Silva's shortcomings come in. Maybe the Magic do need a little more athleticism. There are a lot of really good, rangy wings in this draft. The kind of guys that I know a lot of Magic fans are kind of tired of this team taking. But, if you can convince the Axel Lendenborg to stay in this draft instead of going to Michigan, he'd be great on the Magic. Rasheer Fleming from St. Joseph's, I really like him. That if you draft Rasheer Fleming, I feel a lot more comfortable moving Jonathan Isaac. Not that Rasheer Fleming is as good as Jonathan Isaac, but he does a lot of the same things. And again, cheaper, can grow into it, more appropriate salary perhaps for that role. That's they're like, as much as everyone is excited about like Walter Clayton and Jace Richardson and some of the guards in this draft, I really like some of the wings in this draft. And those would all squeeze Tristan Da Silva out. I think it's folly to give up on young players so soon. Don't get me wrong. I've been around this team enough to see them trade draft picks trade prospects who turned out to be very, very good. And I think you're usually right in betting on young players getting better. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, this is a different kind of draft now. The Magic are not drafting for development or for future progress. They're drafting for players who can help them now. They're free agency. They're off-seasoning for players who can help them win now. And I think Tristan Da Silva can certainly help this team win now. That impact is certainly under question. And that leads us to the last pick, the most controversial pick, the pick that felt like a reach at the time, feels like a reach even now. Jett Howard's frustration in his second season coming up here in just a moment. I did mention the Locked On mock draft that I did 2 years ago that I still get some comments on. And I think most people said I probably did better than Jeff did that day. So Jeff hit me up. All of us, 2 years ago at the draft, all of us said, I said my goal on draft night 2 years ago was to get out of draft night, whether by draft or free agency or trade, with a shooter. I was not leaving that draft without a shooter. We did that Locked On mock draft very, very early. We are currently in the process of doing the Locked On mock draft this year. So note this, mark this. When we unveil it, I will analyze my pick. I will go deeper into some of the trade discussions that I am having right now. We're in the process. And as I'm going through this process, I'm actually a lot more optimistic about things happening. We'll talk more about that a little further down the road. But we did that mock draft very, very early. I picked Grady Dick number 6 because I wanted to make sure I got my shooter. I got yelled at by everybody in the draft room, by all the draft analysts. And I was like, yeah, it was. And I even admitted, like, when we unveiled it, it's like, look, we did this draft a month ago, 3 weeks ago. And like, I've studied this draft a little bit more. I would have done things a little differently. But at the end of the day, I stood by my reasoning that the Magic needed a shooter, and I went and I had other plans with my second pick, which everyone also yelled at me over, and I was just like, no, this is the deal. This is what I want to do. I traded the 11th pick in Chuma Okeke for Isaiah Hartenstein, traded them to the Knicks for Isaiah Hartenstein. Locked On Knicks still calls me and says, like, yeah, you robbed us that day. You robbed us. This was the kind of draft we were in. I did not have Jett Howard on my board. I freely admit that. I thought his defense, what I saw from him defensively at Michigan, did not impress me enough. It did not feel like he was a Magic type of player. But when the Magic took him at 11, which was considered a reach at the time, it felt like a reach, but it felt like, okay, we all said they have to get a shooter. They didn't like Grady Dick for whatever reason. And I told people I would have still drafted Grady Dick at 11. they took Jett Howard. And some of it was, I think they wanted to give him that gap year. They felt comfortable developing him, putting him in the G League, saying, hey, you're not going to play. We don't have the space for you to play. You're not going to play this year. That might have been the first sign of trouble because he took that gap year, largely played well. I would not be upset with how he played in that season, in that G League season. But coming back to the Magic roster for a second season, he had to fight for his spot. He had to fight for his place on this team. And it didn't happen. Now, I would see fans say, oh, you got to play him just to play him, and you got to do this and that. And you're not wrong. Jett Howard's stats, I don't think, reflect his abilities at all. Howard for the season averaged 4.5 points per game, shot 29.6% from three, and 11.7 minutes per game. He appeared in only 60 games, never cracked rotation, played 20 minutes in a game just 8 times. In those games, he averaged 11 points per game, took 7.1 3-point attempts per game, which is what the Magic need, but made only 28.1% of his threes. At the end of the day, yes, Jett did not get opportunities. Those are earned, though. And at the end of the day, whenever Jett was in the rotation, he showed the promise, especially the playmaking promise. But he never performed the one skill he needs to perform. And that's his shooting. He is judged on his shooting. That is his skill. That is what got him to the NBA. And it never felt like he made threes when he was playing meaningful minutes. Like, he would bang threes in garbage time when the game was over, but it never felt like he could make the shots and perform when that opportunity came. Now, Jett did get about a week in the rotation. The Magic sat Gary Harris for several games, gave Jett an opportunity, and whether it was Jamal Mosley just not trusting him, or more likely, honestly, Jett didn't play well. You just had to watch Jett and see, like, oh, I kind of get it. He was out of the rotation just as quickly. And sure, he had to get opportunity. You have to get opportunity to make the most of opportunity. But he also didn't create it. And that says a lot too. Because Gary Harris, everybody hates Gary Harris. I see so many Gary Harris jokes among Magic fans. I get them. I try to explain to people, like, look, that's you're asking him to do things that are not his role. And I agree 100%. The Magic need to upgrade him. Like, that is a chief goal, is take the spot that Gary Harris is in, put a better player in there. Because Gary Harris also struggling to shoot now. After some very good shooting years, just kind of fell off a cliff this year. But he defends so hard. And ultimately, that's what the Magic trusted. That's what the Magic trusted over Jett Howard. Because Jett Howard couldn't reach that level, couldn't get to that level. So again, 2 years ago, Magic had 2 lottery picks, likely the last time they'll have 2 lottery picks in the very near future. And maybe they hit a single with Anthony Black, maybe not. Might depend on what they get for him. They whiffed on Jett Howard. And I like Jett as a person. I want him to be successful. You be around these players, you want them to do well. And Jett's a good kid. But this is a results business. You are judged on your results, and you got to be real. It was a frustrating season for Jett Howard. And he could not find a way out. Could not get the opportunity to find a way out. And so once again, the Magic made a big draft error. And right now, it's costing them a roster spot. It's costing them a cheap contract. And that's the part the Magic have to start getting right. You can't afford to waste these contracts, these low salary slots on Jett Howard's anymore. You need quality players, players who look like rotation players. Jett Howard, when he did play, did not look like a rotation player anymore. And that's at the heart of the frustration on draft night. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can also you can subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the places to podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can also find us on YouTube to search for Locked On Magic. We have just passed 4,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. I'm doing my player evaluations there. Just did Jett Howard yesterday to prepare for this post. Have Anthony Black, Tristan Da Silva up there as well. You can find that at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to me, be sure to go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show to get you ready for the NBA Draft. NBA Draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA Draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll be back again on Tuesday. I'm going to take Memorial Day off, so have a great holiday weekend, everybody. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.